Hello, my name is Vadim Safronov, and today I am presenting our paper with the title "Do we want the new old internet towards seamless and protocol-independent IoT application interoperability?" The paper represents our ongoing research at Systems Institute at the University of Cambridge in cooperation with Centre for Digital Build Britain. As you can probably guess by the title, the paper raises the question of how we should deal with growing IoT heterogeneity in order to provide better application functionality, escaping old internet development flaws and mistakes. To begin with, let's start considering this problem by giving a short overview of the IoT in general. Internet of Things represents a large number of interconnected devices used in any modern smart environment, such as offices, buildings, cities, and so on. A smart environment usually contains sensors, meters, which measure things such as temperature or humidity, actuators, which trigger some events based on the sensor readings, and also IoT controllers, which make sure that all the devices behave as they should. IoT devices employ different communication standards designed for different requirements. For example, Wi-Fi for high bandwidth power-hungry devices like IP cameras, while using LoRaWAN or Sigfox for low power, low bandwidth environmental sensors. Such IoT protocol and device heterogeneity creates unlimited application possibilities for the end users and companies. However, smooth introduction of such IoT services is now being slowed down by several IoT interoperability issues. The problem lies at the internet development roots, where all devices were stick to IP addresses by the TCP/IP model, concept of which remains unchanged since early 1980s approximately. And due to that fact, IP stack has now become a given and thus serves a basement for the development of upper layer network applications, including IoT area as well. However, fortunately, IoT doesn't have to be tied to IP addresses. For example, Zigbee, Z-Wave, and many other existing IoT protocols are not initially designed for IP support, as bringing IP stack to them would significantly decrease the protocol performance and drain device battery. What really matters here is seamless application interoperation over that IoT heterogeneity, regardless of underlying protocols used. The IP protocol should be just one of the many underlying protocol options for that seamless and common upper service provisioning. As a solution to this problem, we proposed a decentralized protocol-neutral IoT interoperation model. The model is inspired by a theoretical internet working architecture called Plutarch, proposed by Crockford et al. In early 2000s, and this architecture is now adjusted for the modern IoT scenarios. The model solves IoT heterogeneity problem through the concept of context and interstitial functions. A context is a group of devices which use same protocols, message formats, and addressing schemes. For example, a group of Zigbee environmental sensors forms a separate context, while Wi-Fi smart plug and door sensors forms another single context. These separate contexts are interconnected by interstitial functions implemented within smart gateways distributed across the architecture. Unlike existing limited gateways with basic mapping functionality, an interstitial function is a complex software component which performs several essential interoperation duties. The list of these duties can be extended, but the main functions include application-aware message transition between adjacent contexts, enforcing a set of smart policies on each context border, such as ensuring quality of service stays at the right level while transitioning to a more limited context, for example, from high bandwidth Wi-Fi to Zigbee with lower bandwidth. Also, the policies include filtering some redundant protocol data and even performing some local workflow automation scenarios, which can be delegated for in-network management from the central control platform. An expert listener might also notice that without IP layer, the proposed distributed model assumes n-squared translation, where n, the number of IoT protocols, could be quite high and could make it hard to implement a general IP-free gateway. However, realistically speaking, the n number is not really large. For example, it's usually around 3 or 4 protocols used altogether in a smart environment, which means that functional and implementation complexity of IP agnostic switching between different contexts on a smart gateway can be negligible for IoT scenarios. To check that Plutarch idea, we developed a prototype which provides seamless MQTT automation over LoRa and Wi-Fi within general sense actuate automation activities. The main interoperation nodes here are sensors A, B, and C, which are PyCon low Pi4 nodes written in MicroPython. While sensor B imitates just a standard MQTT-based Wi-Fi sensor, we wrote a proprietary sensor A and C MQTT clients. For example, LoRa sensor A imitates a power-saving LoRa device, such as a LoRa door open-close sensor with MQTT client, which sleeps most of the time while not publishing. LoRa sensor C imitates a power-hungry device, such as a LoRa smart plug with an MQTT client always listening to upcoming MQTT messages and also regularly publishing other readings. We used a broker-less MQTT approach in the LoRa context, as bringing the standard broker would significantly decrease LoRa bandwidth, which is already quite low by the protocol definition. Thus, the MQTT messages were broadcasted by the smart gateway and LoRa nodes, and only those devices which are subscribed to the given topic and have encryption keys are able to parse that MQTT messages. All MQTT LoRa traffic is also AES encrypted. All LoRa and Wi-Fi devices are visible to each other thanks to the interstitial function on the smart gateway, which also applies smart policies on the border, controls quality of service between the contexts, filter MQTT topics, and also remove redundant data traffic, and so on. The smart gateway is also a low Pi4 node with an interstitial function written in MicroPython. For the evaluation purposes, our LoRa Wi-Fi decentralized MQTT interoperation model was compared with the baseline, which represents an IP-dependent MQTT approach, showing how the same interoperation functionality is achieved right now between LoRa and Wi-Fi devices using the LoRaWAN standard. In LoRaWAN, sensors can't interoperate directly with each other, and all the traffic from LoRa devices goes to the LoRaWAN server in order to be available on the Wi-Fi side through MQTT. The smart gateway is replaced by a simple LoRaWAN gateway, which performs basic functions of LoRa message delivery from the sensors to the central LoRaWAN server. We evaluated the performance of our IP-agnostic model against the IP-dependent one within some common smart space sense actuate automation scenarios, and used two main metrics, namely command reaction latency and battery discharge time. The results for our IP-agnostic model are highlighted in blue, while the baseline results are shown in the orange color. The empirical CDFs with latency distribution show how fast sensors react to the received readings generated by other devices. The latency results show up to 2 times faster command reaction time of the IP-agnostic model on most of the communication links. Slower command reaction in IP-dependent approach caused mainly by higher number of intermediate hops between the nodes, as even for local interoperation, all LoRa traffic has to pass through the gateway and server where the MQTT broker placed. Another important note here is that both models show around the same battery discharge speed measured on power-saving sensor A. Thus, the IP-agnostic model has no power consumption overhead, which means the approach can be further generalized to other non-IP low-power networks, such as Sigfox, for example. To sum up the main takeaways, the received promising evaluation results indicate that seamless and protocol-neutral IoT application interoperation is possible and even more beneficial compared to the legacy IP-based service delivery models. This paper is a starting point towards escaping the IP bottleneck in our future IoT networks before the IP become the new normal, or probably better to say old normal, with its sole subsequent flaws existing since the internet creation. It is also noteworthy that the model's decentralized feature still allows the use of IP protocol when necessary, for example, for cloud IoT services or for some remote control functions through legacy IP-based networks. Therefore, the next steps include the model generalization to other popular wireless IoT protocols and applications, such as Zigbee, Z-Wave, or Sigfox. The centralized approach taken in the model also opens avenues for researching the ways for distributed IoT management and data control in a resilient and privacy-preserving manner. For now, that's all from my side. And if you have any questions, for example, about implementation complexity of the given decentralized interoperation approach or its longer-term benefits, I'm happy to answer them right now or by my email address below. Thank you.